A gentleman bought a storage unit for $300, but what was inside changed everything. Silas Harrison felt his hands trembling as he held the old hammer he had brought from home. He had spent his last savings, exactly $300, to win that abandoned storage unit at the morning auction. A widower for 3 years, he had sold almost everything he owned to pay the bills piling up since he lost his job at the factory. The rusty padlock resisted each blow. Silas stopped to catch his breath and looked around. The storage unit was in an industrial area on the outskirts of Pittsburgh, surrounded by other containers equally forgotten by time. When he finally managed to break the lock and open the doors, he came across something that left him breathless. Dozens of stacked boxes and, nailed to the back wall, a yellowed envelope with his name handwritten on it. "How can my name be here?" he muttered to himself. The envelope trembled in his hands as he opened it. Inside was a faded photo of himself as a young man, next to a man he couldn't remember who he was. On the back of the photo, geographical coordinates written in pencil and a phrase that sent a chill down his spine. "For Silas, my best friend, I never forgot you." The first box he opened revealed old toys, all carefully wrapped in tissue paper. They were identical to the ones his son Derek had as a child: a red fire truck, tin soldiers, a brown leather ball. Silas sat down on the dusty floor, picking up each object with care as if they were made of crystal. "Dad? Are you in there?" The neighbor's voice, Mrs. Gladys, snapped him out of his trance. She appeared at the entrance of the storage unit with wide eyes full of curiosity. "My God, Silas, what kind of treasure is this?" Silas tried to hide the envelope, but Mrs. Gladys had already seen everything. He had known that woman for years and knew that within hours the whole town would know about his discovery. "It's nothing special, Gladys, just some old stuff." "Old stuff, nothing. These toys look like antiques. They must be worth a fortune." Silas sighed. He knew that conversation would bring trouble. Mrs. Gladys was known for spreading news faster than the wind. In the second box he found letters, many letters, all addressed to him, written by someone who only signed as "Your Forgotten Friend." The dates ranged over the last 20 years, as if someone had spent 2 decades writing to him without ever sending the letters. "Silas, today I thought of you again. Do you still like fishing in the Monongahela River like we did when we were kids?" read one of the letters. "Today I saw a boy playing with a toy car just like yours. I cried remembering our Sundays in my grandmother's backyard," read another. Each letter mentioned memories that Silas couldn't recall. It was as if an important part of his life had been erased. The more he read, the more a strange feeling took hold of him. It wasn't just curiosity, but a deep pain, as if he had lost something very valuable and only now discovered it. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, feel free to hit the like button, and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot who are just starting out. Now continuing. At the end of the afternoon, when Silas got home with some of the letters, he found his son Derek waiting on the porch. They hadn't spoken properly in 2 years, ever since Derek accused him of being negligent with the family's finances after his mother's death. "Dad, Mrs. Gladys called me. She said you found something valuable." Silas sighed. He had expected that. "It's nothing that concerns you, Derek." "How not? If it's worth something, it could help pay off your debts. You can't keep living like this." "Like what?" "You know very well. You sold almost everything. You live in a house that's falling apart. You don't even have money for your blood pressure medication." Silas felt the irritation rising. It was always like this between them. Derek only showed up when he thought there was something of value involved. "These things aren't for selling, Derek." "Why? They're just old junk, aren't they?" "No. They're someone's memories. Memories that maybe belong to me, too." Derek looked at his father with that expression Silas knew well, the same one he wore as a kid when he thought his father was talking nonsense. "You need medical help, Dad. You're starting to mix things up." "I'm not mixing anything up." Silas showed one of the letters to his son, but Derek just shook his head. "This could be a scam, Dad. Someone found your info and set this whole thing up to fool you." "Then how do you explain the photos? How do you explain the toys that are identical to yours?" Derek looked at the photo his father had shown him. For a moment, his expression changed. There was something familiar about that young face of his father's, something that reminded him of stories his mother told about the family's troubled youth. "Dad, you never told me you had close friends when you were young. It's just, I don't really remember that time. After my mother moved with me here, a lot of things got muddled in my head." It was true. Silas had always had gaps in his memory, especially about the first 15 years of his life. His mother said it was normal that kids don't remember much, but now looking at those letters, he started to wonder if there was something more. The next morning, Silas went back to the storage unit with Derek, who had insisted on coming along. This time they opened more boxes and found even more intriguing things. There was a collection of vinyl records, all songs Silas loved, but he couldn't remember when or where he'd discovered them. "Dad, look at this." Derek was holding a bigger, heavier envelope. Inside there were official documents, certificates, old forms, and in the middle of it all, something that made Silas sit back down on the floor. "What is it, Dad?" They're adoption papers." "Yours?" "No, not mine. Or at least I don't think they're mine." But taking a closer look, Silas saw his name on the papers. The birth date was correct, as were the names of his adoptive parents. Documents he had never seen, speaking of an adoption he never knew happened. "Dad, that means that I was adopted, and I never knew." The silence that followed was heavy. Derek looked at his father with a mix of surprise and compassion. He had always been tough on Silas, but at that moment he began to understand that maybe there were reasons for the gaps in his father's life that he had never considered. "There's more stuff here, Dad." Derek had found a folder with more photos, dozens of them, showing two children playing together. One of them was clearly Silas as a child, but skinnier and in simpler clothes than he remembered wearing. The other child appeared in every photo, always smiling next to Silas. That must be the friend who wrote the letters. But why don't I remember him? Maybe because leaving where you lived was traumatic. Silas spent the rest of the day reading more letters and examining photos. Each image seemed to stir a familiar feeling, but fuzzy, like trying to remember a dream in the morning. One of the more recent letters had information that made him decide to follow the coordinates written on the first photo. "Silas, I found out where you live now. I know you don't remember me, but I never stopped looking. When you leave here, look up these coordinates. My mother still lives there and she can explain everything." The coordinates led to an old neighborhood in Pittsburgh, in an area Silas knew by sight but had never lived in. When he arrived at the address with Derek, he found a simple but well-kept house. An old woman with white hair was watering plants on the porch. When she saw Silas, the woman dropped the watering can. "Si. My God, is it really you?" Silas felt a chill run down his spine. No one had called him by that nickname in decades. "Do you know me, ma'am?" "Do I know you? Boy, you practically lived here when you were little. You were my Julian's best friend." "Julian? My son. You two were inseparable. You played from dawn till dusk. When your mother took you away, it was one of the saddest days of Julian's life." The woman, who introduced herself as Mrs. Martha, invited Silas and Derek inside. The living room was full of photos, and many of them showed the same scene Silas had found in the storage unit. "Mrs. Martha, where is your son now?" The woman's expression changed. She lowered her eyes and took a deep breath before answering. "Julian left us last year, son, heart trouble." Silas felt an inexplicable pain. How could he feel so much for someone he didn't even remember? He spent his whole life looking for you, Si. After you left, he was never the same boy. He always said he'd find his best friend one day. But why don't I remember him? Your mother, she had her reasons. Back then you were living in a tough situation. Your biological mother couldn't properly take care of you. When the adoption opportunity came up, she thought it best to make you forget everything from the past so you could start a new life. Mrs. Martha went to an old cabinet and brought out a shoebox full of letters. He wrote to you every week. At first, your adoptive mother received the letters and replied saying you were fine, but that it was better not to stay in touch. After a few years, she changed addresses and left no trace. So he never stopped looking for me. Never. He spent his savings hiring detectives, putting ads in the newspaper and then online. And When he finally found you about 5 years ago, you were already married, had your own life. He was afraid to show up and mess everything up. 5 years? He knew where I lived 5 years ago? He did. And he watched you from afar. He knew about your job, knew when your wife got sick, knew when you lost your job. He wanted to help, but didn't know how to get close. Derek, who had remained silent, finally spoke. He was the one who organized that auction, wasn't he? Mrs. Martha smiled for the first time since they'd started talking. My boy was always clever. Yes, it was him. In the last months of his life, he set everything up. He bought that storage unit, filled it with memories of you two, and made sure the minimum bid at the auction was something you could afford. $300. He knew you didn't have much money, but that you'd make an effort for $300 if you thought you might find something to resell. Silas was silent, processing everything. A lifetime of lost friendship, a friend who never gave up on him and he didn't even remember. Mrs. Martha, can I see his room? Of course, son. Julian's room was simple, but the walls were covered with photos of Silas. Photos of them as kids together, but also recent ones taken from a distance. Silas at the front gate of his house. Silas leaving work. Silas at the hospital visiting his wife. He watched you to make sure you were okay. Derek was visibly moved. He'd never seen such a deep display of friendship. Dad, there's something I need to say. I was too hard on you after Mom died. I thought you didn't care enough, that you didn't fight hard enough to save her. Derek? No, Dad. Let me finish. Seeing all this, I understand that you've always carried pains I didn't know about, and that even so, you always did your best for our family. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, feel free to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. That helps us a lot who are just starting out. Now, continuing, Mrs. Martha showed them more letters that Julian had written but never sent. In one of them, dated a few months before his departure, he explained his entire plan. I know it may sound strange, but I found out that Silas is going through a tough time. I missed the chance to help him when he needed it most, when he lost his wife and his job. But I can still do one last thing for him. I'm going to gather all our memories, all the things I've kept over the years, and find a way to give back the childhood we lost. Maybe then he'll understand that there was always someone who cared. There's more stuff in the storage unit you haven't seen yet, said Mrs. Martha. He left specific instructions on the order you should open the boxes. Back in the storage unit, they followed a hand-drawn map Mrs. Martha had given them. The next box to be opened was marked with the number 3. Inside it, Silas found letters from his own adoptive mother, letters she had written to Julian over the years, explaining why she thought it was best to keep the boys apart. Julian is a lovely boy, but Silas needs to forget that difficult phase of his life. He has nightmares, cries in his sleep, and I think it's best for him to start fresh. Please understand, and don't insist on staying in touch. The letters showed a worried mother, trying to protect her son, but also revealed the pain of a friendship being forcibly cut off. Derek helped his father sit down on one of the empty boxes. Dad, she was trying to protect you. I know. But was it really necessary to make me forget everything? Couldn't she have explained it to me when I grew up? Maybe she was afraid you'd want to go back to your old life. Silas ran a hand over his face. He was emotionally exhausted. 40 years of a friendship that only existed on Julian's side, while he lived with a void he never knew how to explain. Box number 4 brought an even bigger surprise. They were medical documents, tests, and prescriptions, not for Silas, but for his biological father. Julian had managed to track down Silas's biological family and discovered important information about his health. Dad, look at this. Your biological father had hereditary heart problems. So what? You also have high blood pressure and heart issues. This could be important for your treatment. Among the documents, there was also information about Silas's biological siblings who were still alive. 2 brothers and a sister, all living in the Midwest. Julian found out all of this? Looks like it. And look here, Dad. There are his letters to your biological siblings explaining who you are and asking for information about the family. The siblings' replies were in a separate folder. They had responded enthusiastically, sending photos and family stories. One of the brothers, named Samuel, had even offered financial help if Silas needed it. They wanted to meet you, Dad. But they never knew where I was. Julian did, and he was planning to bring you all together. Box 5 contained something that made Silas cry for the first time since arriving at the storage unit. They were handmade toys, exact replicas of the toys they had as children. Each piece had been carefully carved and painted by Julian over the years. A note explained, "I made these toys just like ours, Silas. Every time I felt sad about our lost friendship, I made a new toy. It was like you were still playing with me." Derek picked up one of the wooden cars and examined it carefully. "Dad, this is a work of art. He must have spent months on each piece." 40 years, Derek. He spent 40 years doing this. That night, Silas couldn't sleep. He stayed on the porch looking at the stars, trying to force his memory to bring back some recollection of Julian. Around 3 in the morning, something happened. A vague image, like a flash, appeared in his mind. 2 boys running after a blue kite in an open field. The next day, he and Derek went back to the storage unit with Mrs. Martha. She wanted to help them open the last boxes and tell more stories about the boys' friendship. Box 6 was full of items from the school where they studied together. Notebooks, pencils, schoolwork. Julian had even kept the desks where they sat side by side. "You two were terrible in school," Mrs. Martha laughed. "Always up to some mischief. The teacher was always sending notes home. She showed one of the notebooks where the 2 boys had written a friendship contract, promising never to forget each other. I, Silas, promise to be Julian's friend forever, even if we live far apart. I, Julian, promise never to forget Silas, and to always be his best friend." The childish signatures were shaky, but legible. Silas ran his finger over his own signature from when he was 7 years old. "I broke the promise without even knowing it," he murmured. "No, you didn't, my son," said Mrs. Martha. "The promise was right here, kept in Julian's heart, and now it's come back to you." Box 7 revealed something unexpected. They were letters from other people in the town where they lived as children. Neighbors, shopkeepers, even their teacher had written to Julian over the years, sending memories of Silas and stories that might interest him. "Julian, I remembered another one of Silas's pranks. The day he put a frog in Heather's backpack and she screamed so loud the principal came running thinking the school was on fire. My son, I found that photo of Silas from the day of the county fair when he was dressed up as a farmer. I thought you might like to have it. Dad, the whole town helped him keep your memory alive. He got everyone to remember me, except for me, myself." Box 8 contained something that completely changed the course of the discovery. It was legal documents, deeds, and contracts. Julian had bought a small piece of land in downtown Pittsburgh and put it in Silas's name. "He bought a piece of land for you, Dad. But why?" Mrs. Martha smiled and explained. "It was the dream you two had as kids. You always talked about having a place where you could build a giant treehouse and play forever." And he actually bought the land. Not only did he buy it, but he had already started planning a community project there. He wanted to create a kind of community center where underprivileged kids could play and study. The documents showed that Julian had saved up for years to buy that land. There were blueprints for an architectural project, construction budgets, and even a list of volunteers who had offered to help. "Dad, this is worth a lot of money. You don't have to worry about the debts anymore." "I can't sell it, Derek. That was his dream." "Then let's build the community center." "How? We don't have the money for that." "We'll get it. If he managed to bring together all these people who cared about you two, we can too." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, go ahead and leave a like, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. As they were examining the land documents, someone they didn't expect arrived at the storage unit. A man about 50 years old, well-dressed, driving an expensive car. "Sorry to interrupt. Are you Silas Harrison's family?" "That's me. How can I help you?" "My name is Samuel Miller. I'm your brother." Silas stood still, staring at the man who had some features similar to his own. Derek was the first to react. "Are you one of the brothers Julian found?" "Exactly. I received a letter from him a few months ago before he passed away. He explained the whole situation to me and gave me this address. He said that when you arrived at Box 8, I could show up." "He even planned that?" "Silas was very meticulous. He sent me letters for 2 years, telling me about you, your life, your problems. He wanted to make sure I was a trustworthy person before he introduced us." Samuel explained that he was a construction business owner and that he had been very moved when he found out he had a long-lost brother. When he learned about Silas's plans for the community center, he decided he wanted to be part of the project. "Silas, I'd like to fund the construction of the community center. It would be my way of honoring your friend's memory and getting to know my lost brother better." Silas didn't know what to say. In just a few days, his life had completely changed. From a lonely, indebted widower, he now found out he had a biological family that cared about him and the resources to achieve a dream he didn't even know he had. "Why do you want to do this for me? You don't know me." "But he knew us," said Samuel, pointing to the photos of Julian scattered around the warehouse. "And if Julian believed in you, so do we." In the following days, Silas and Julian's story began to spread throughout the city. Mrs. Gladys, with her tendency to gossip, ended up telling everyone about the warehouse and the lost friendship. But this time, the neighbors' curiosity brought something positive. People started showing up, offering help. Some were old neighbors who remembered the 2 boys. Others were parents of children who could benefit from the community center. Even the mayor of the city showed up to learn the story. "Mr. Silas, your story has touched the entire town. I'd like to offer the city support for the community center project. But I don't even know if I have the ability to run a project like this." "You don't have to do it alone. Julian already left behind an entire network of people willing to help." It was true. In Box 9, they found a list of more than 50 names of people who had committed to contributing to the project in some way. Retired teachers who wanted to give classes, bricklayers offering volunteer work, shopkeepers who would donate materials. "Dad, how did he manage to organize all this without you knowing?" "I think he had the same gift your mother had for bringing people together. She always said I was too shy, but that she could make friends anywhere." Box 10 brought what was perhaps the most exciting discovery yet. It was an old camcorder, and inside it was a cassette tape. Mrs. Martha suggested they take the tape somewhere they could watch it. At Samuel's house, which had equipment to play old tapes, they watched footage of Silas and Julian as children. The black and white images showed the 2 boys playing in the backyard of Julian's grandmother's house, exactly as Mrs. Martha had described. "Dad, look how happy you were." It was true. In the footage, Silas as a child was always smiling, running after Julian, making faces at the camera. He was a very different child from the introverted man he had become. "I think I lost more than just my memory of him. I lost part of who I was." "But you can get it back, Dad. Not the memory, but the joy." The footage also showed something none of them expected. At the end of the tape, there was a recent recording. Julian, as an adult, already visibly weakened by his illness, speaking directly to the camera. "Silas, if you're watching this, it means my plan worked. I know you don't remember me, and I'm not angry about that. Your mother made the decision she thought was best for you at the time, but I want you to know that you've always been the best friend anyone could ever have. In the 3 years we spent together as kids, you taught me that true friendship isn't about always being together, but about never forgetting the affection we feel for each other." Silas started crying. It was the first time he heard Julian's adult voice, and it was as if something inside him awoke. "All these years, I kept our friendship safe for the both of us. Now it's time to give back everything you gave me when we were kids. The community center isn't just a building, Silas. It's the symbol that our promise of friendship still holds, and that you can do for other kids what you did for me. Be a true friend." The recording went on with Julian explaining every detail of the project, every person he had contacted, every document he had prepared. It was like watching a close friend lay out his dreams, even though Silas didn't remember when they had dreamt them together. "Silas, I know you must be feeling guilty for not remembering me. Don't. You carried our friendship in your heart, even without knowing it. Every time you were kind to a kid, every time you helped someone in need, every time you smiled even when you were sad, you were being the Silas I knew. The Silas who taught me what it means to be a good friend. The next boxes revealed more details of the project. Box 11 contained wooden scale models made by Julian himself, showing what the community center would look like. There was a library, classrooms, a playground, and at the center of it all a big tree where a tree house would be built. He really wanted to build the tree house you two dreamed of, said Derek. It's like he spent his whole life getting ready for this moment. Box 12 brought something unexpected. A letter from Silas's daughter, Chloe. She was a doctor and had lived in Chicago for 10 years. Julian had managed to contact her and explained her father's health situation. Dr. Julian, I was very moved to receive your letter. I didn't know my father had hereditary heart problems. As a doctor, I understand the importance of this information. I'll travel to Pittsburgh as soon as possible to examine my father, and thank you in person for taking care of him from afar all these years. Dad, why did you never tell me Chloe was coming back? Because I didn't know. I haven't talked to her in months. But Julian knew, and she's coming because of him. That afternoon, Chloe arrived from Chicago. She was a 35-year-old woman, serious as always, but visibly emotional when she found her father in the storage room surrounded by so much history. Dad, why did you never tell me about your health problems? I didn't want to worry you. I know your life in Chicago is hectic. My life always has time for you. The problem is you never tell me anything. Chloe examined the medical records Julian had gathered about Silas's biological family. As a doctor, she immediately understood the importance of that information. Dad, this information about your biological father is crucial. We need to run new tests and adjust your treatment. Julian may have saved your life by putting these records together. What do you mean? The type of heart problem your biological father had is treatable, but it requires specific monitoring. Without this information, your doctors were treating you in a generic way. Chloe stayed in the storage room for the rest of the day, learning about Julian's story and being moved by the dedication of her father's unknown friend. Dad, this man loved you in a way I've never seen. It's a friendship that spanned decades with no payback. That's why I feel so guilty. You shouldn't. Look at everything he left behind. He didn't do this expecting anything in return. He did it because your friendship meant everything to him. Box 13 contained professional architectural blueprints of the community center. Julian had hired an architect and paid out of his own pocket to ensure the project was executed properly. Samuel, who knew a thing or two about construction, examined the blueprints with admiration. Silas, this is a top-notch project. He thought of every detail: accessibility, sustainability, safety. The design alone must have cost a fortune. And he paid for it all on his own? From what I can see here, yes. And he even set aside money for the first phase of construction. The blueprints showed the community center would be much more than they had ever imagined. Besides the classrooms and the library, there would be a communal kitchen, an art studio, a woodworking workshop, and even a small auditorium. Dad, this is going to benefit hundreds of families. And it'll create jobs for a lot of people too. Look here. There are plans to hire folks from the community to work at the center. Box 14 revealed something neither of them expected. They were letters from kids at the school where Julian had worked as a janitor in the last years of his life. The children wrote about Mr. Jules and how he always talked about his best childhood friend. Mr. Jules always said he had a friend who was like a brother. He said that when you two met again, you were going to build a giant treehouse for all the poor kids to play in. My grandma said Mr. Jules saved up money every month for a special project. Now I know it was for you. He talked about me to those kids. And they loved the stories, said Mrs. Martha. My son became a bit of a legend at that school, the man who never gave up on his best friend. The children's letters also included drawings of the two friends playing, based on the stories Julian would tell. It was touching to see how their friendship had inspired a new generation. One of the kids had written, "Mr. Jules, when you find your friend Silas, can you invite him to come to our school? We want to meet the most important friend in the world." Dad, the kids want to meet you. But I don't have anything special to offer. Yes, you do. You have the story of the most beautiful friendship I've ever seen. Box 15 brought the last big documentary surprise. It was a record of every time Julian had tried to get close to Silas over the years, but always backed out at the last minute. There were photos of Julian outside the factory where Silas worked, dated 5 years ago. Receipts for flowers he had sent to the funeral of Silas's wife, but without signing his name. Payment receipts for hospital bills that Silas never knew who had covered. Dad, he paid for part of Mom's treatment? How is that possible? It's all documented here. He found out when Mom was hospitalized and made anonymous donations to the hospital to cover some of the costs. Silas sat down on the floor of the storage unit and cried like he hadn't cried in years. Every time he had felt abandoned by the world, Julian was there, looking out for him from afar. 40 years, Derek. 40 years he looked out for me without me knowing, and now it's our turn to take care of his dream. In the following days, the story spread beyond Pittsburgh. Journalists from Chicago came to meet the man who never gave up on his best friend. The story touched so many people that donations started pouring in from all over the country. Silas, who had always been shy and reserved, found himself at the center of a movement that grew every day. People offered money, building materials, volunteer work, everything to make Julian's dream come true. Dad, how does it feel to be famous? Weird. All my life I've been invisible, and now everyone wants to talk to me. That's because your story with Julian shows there's still goodness in the world. The mayor officially designated the community center project as being in the public interest. The land that Julian had bought was declared a public utility, which ensured tax benefits for anyone who wanted to contribute. The groundbreaking ceremony was scheduled for the day Silas turned the same age Julian had been when he passed away. It was a tribute that Mrs. Martha had suggested. The last boxes, numbers 16 through 20, contained more personal items from their friendship. Toys they had made together from scrap metal, stones they had collected from the Monongahela River where they fished, and even a baby tooth Silas had lost and given to Julian as a keepsake. Dad, he kept a baby tooth for 40 years. Looks like it. Each small item had a tiny label written in Julian's hand, explaining the importance of that object to their friendship. Stone from the river where we fished on the last Sunday before Silas moved away. I promised I would never forget that day. A little car we made from a sardine can. Silas said it would be our car when we grew up. A spinning top Silas gave me for my 8th birthday, the best gift I ever got. Each object is like a prayer of friendship, Chloe observed. Your mother would say the same thing, Silas agreed. The day of the groundbreaking ceremony arrived with a clear blue sky. Hundreds of people gathered on the land Julian had bought. Children from the school where he had worked came with their families. Old neighbors who remembered the 2 boys were also there. Silas was nervous. He had never spoken in public before, but everyone expected him to say a few words. Dad, what are you going to say? I don't know. What do you say in a situation like this? Speak from the heart. When it was his turn to speak, Silas stepped onto the small makeshift platform and looked at all those people who had gathered because of a friendship he couldn't even remember. I don't remember Julian. I wish I could, but I can't. But looking at everything he left behind, I understand that our friendship was stronger than my memory. He remembered for both of us for 40 years. The audience was completely silent. Julian taught me that true love doesn't expect anything in return. He cherished our friendship for a whole lifetime without getting anything back. And now, seeing all of you here, I understand that he didn't do this just for me. He did it to show that good people still exist in this world. Silas looked at Derek, who was crying with pride for his father. This community center is going to be much more than a building. It's going to be proof that kindness still exists and that true friendship can change the world one child at a time. The applause was long and heartfelt. Mrs. Martha came to the stage and hugged Silas as if he were her own son. Julian would be very proud of you today, my boy. The first shovel of dirt was thrown by Silas himself, joined by Derek, Chloe, Samuel, Mrs. Martha, and one child from Julian's school, representing all the children who would benefit from the project. Construction took a year to complete. During that time, Silas threw himself fully into the project, learning about civil engineering from Samuel, about education from the volunteer teachers, and about management from Chloe. "Dad, you've changed a lot this year." "How so?" "You're happier, more confident. It's like you've found a purpose." It was true. Silas had come out of the depression that hit him after his wife's death and losing his job. Now he had a reason to wake up every day and a reunited family that supported him. The community center was inaugurated on a sunny Saturday. The treehouse was the last thing to be built, exactly as Julian had drawn in his plans. It was big enough for several children to play at the same time and had a sign with both Silas and Julian's names. "Friends forever." On the first day of operation, over 100 children visited the center. Silas and Mrs. Martha walked through the space, watching the children's joy. "My son would be very happy to see this," said Mrs. Martha. "I think he is seeing it," replied Silas. 3 months after the opening, Silas received an unexpected visit. It was an elderly woman accompanied by a middle-aged man. "Mr. Silas, my name is Audrey Miller. I'm Samuel's sister, and yours too." Silas had been so involved with the community center project that he had forgotten he had other biological siblings besides Samuel. "And this is my son, Caleb, your nephew." Silas's biological family was larger than he had imagined. Audrey brought photos of the entire family, including Silas's biological parents, who had died many years ago. "Our parents always wondered what happened to you. Back then, social services said you had been adopted by a good family, but we never got any further news. Did you look for me?" "We looked for years, but adoption records were sealed back then." Audrey explained that Julian had found the family through a distant relative who still lived in Silas's hometown. He had spent months earning the family's trust before revealing where Silas was. "He made us promise we'd only show up when you were ready to meet us." "And how would he know when I was ready?" "He said that once you achieved the dream you two shared, you'd be ready to have a family again." The full family reunion took place at the community center on the day Silas completed 1 year as volunteer director of the project. Besides Samuel and Audrey, other cousins, in-laws, and nephews came. An entire family that Silas didn't even know existed. Derek and Chloe were thrilled to discover they had so many relatives. Chloe, especially, became interested in the family's medical history, which further helped Silas's treatment. "Dad, now I understand where your stubbornness comes from," Derek joked. "It runs in the family. And where your kindness comes from, too," added Chloe. 6 months after the family reunion, Silas received a call that would change his life once again. It was from a television production company in Chicago that wanted to make a documentary about his and Julian's story. "Mr. Silas, your story has moved the entire country. I'd like to take your message to even more people." Silas hesitated. He had never liked being in the spotlight, but the community center always needed more resources to keep running. "If it helps the center, I'll do it." The documentary was filmed over 3 months. The footage showed the center's operations, interviews with the children it served, testimonies from Silas's family, and a moving reenactment of the friendship between the 2 boys. Mrs. Martha appeared in several scenes, telling stories about the boys and showing old photos. Despite her advanced age, she had a great time being a movie actress, as she put it. "My son would have become a soap opera actor if he were alive." She laughed. He was always a bit of a show-off. The documentary aired on one of the country's largest television networks and moved millions of Americans. The day after the broadcast, the community center received donations from all over the country. "Dad, people are sending money from abroad too." "I don't believe it." "It's true. A Brazilian woman living in Japan sent a letter saying she cried over your story and wants to help." With the resources that came in after the documentary, it was possible to expand the community center. They built a sports court, a small pool for swimming lessons, and even a mini theater where the children put on performances. Silas, who at 65 had never imagined he would be responsible for a large-scale social project, discovered he was a natural administrator. With Chloe's help on the medical side and Samuel's on the engineering side, he turned the center into a national reference model. "Dad, how does it feel to be nationally recognized?" "Strange, but happy, especially because I know Julian would be proud." 2 years after the center opened, Silas was invited to speak in several cities across the country about friendship and solidarity. He always brought along some of Julian's letters and photos of the two of them as kids. "People ask me how I overcame the guilt of not remembering him," Silas said during one of the lectures. "The answer is that I understood that memory isn't just in our heads. It's in the things we do, in the people we touch, in the love we leave in the world." The audience always got emotional when Silas showed the handmade toys Julian had made and explained how each piece represented years of longing and hope. In one of the talks, a child asked Silas if he still felt sad for not remembering his friend. "No, my angel, because now I understand that Julian didn't want me to remember him. He wanted me to remember what it's like to be happy. And every time I see you kids playing at the center, I remember." 3 years after its opening, the Julian and Silas Community Center had already served over 1,000 children. Former students came back to visit, some as volunteers, others bringing their own kids. Mrs. Martha, despite her advanced age, still visited the center weekly. She had become a sort of official grandmother to all the children. "My boy, your Julian must be glowing seeing all this," she told Silas. "I'm sure he is. And you're a big part of this too, Mrs. Martha." One autumn afternoon, while Silas watched the children playing in the treehouse, something happened. A vague but clear memory came to his mind. 2 boys running after a blue butterfly in a backyard with fruit trees. For a moment, Silas could feel again the joy of that child he once was. He couldn't see Julian's face in the memory, but he could feel what it was like to have a best friend. "Dad, are you okay?" asked Derek, who had come to pick him up. "I am. Better than ever." That night, Silas wrote a letter to Julian. He knew Julian couldn't read it, but he felt the need to say the words he had never been able to speak. "Julian, my forgotten friend who never forgot me. Thank you for holding on to our friendship for so long. Thank you for teaching me that true love expects nothing in return. Thank you for giving me back the joy I didn't even know I had lost. Our promise of friendship is fulfilled. Forever." Silas placed the letter in a special box he kept at home, along with some of the most important things Julian had left behind. It was his way of continuing the friendship, even if in a different way. On the 4th anniversary of the center's opening, the city of Pittsburgh decided to create the Municipal Day of True Friendship in honor of Silas and Julian. The chosen date was Julian's birthday. "Dad, imagine if someone had told you 4 years ago that you'd have an official day named after you. I'd have said they were crazy. And today? Today I understand that life can change completely when we find our purpose." At the ceremony establishing the official day, Silas's entire family was present. Samuel with his wife and kids, Audrey with her grandchildren, Chloe with her new boyfriend she'd found, Derek with his wife and young children. "Grandpa Silas, tell us the story of your friend," one of the grandchildren asked. "Sure, my love. It's a story about a boy who never gave up believing in friendship." As he told the story to his grandchildren, Silas realized he had found the best way to honor Julian's memory, by passing the story on, so that other children would learn the value of true friendship. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story, and where you're watching us from. Do you believe friendship can stand the test of time like Silas and Julian's? Leave your opinion in the comments.